And today, we're looking at the Pro Bowl and which members of the Miami Dolphins deserve their shot to make the Pro Bowl honors in 2022.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Dolphins fans? Kyle Krabs at Locked On Dolphins, your team every day here on the Locked On Network. Today is Friday, December 9th, 2022. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Dolphins your first Miami Dolphins listen of the day. And today is usually Power to the Pod. It's usually the mailbag episode. And we're going to do that this weekend. But today, I had one question that was submitted that as I was preparing to go through the mailbag, I thought was an incredible opportunity to actually commit some in-depth time to with this Miami Dolphins roster. And that is, which members of the 2022 Miami Dolphins significantly deserve Pro Bowl honors for their play thus far this season. Now, there's a couple different variables that go into the traditional Pro Bowl honors. Of course, it is not just level of play, but it is definitive production amongst your peers. And it is also there has to be a certain level of brand and player awareness for casual fans and the casual football media and the national football media. There's been players in years past who we as Dolphins fans can look at and point to and say, well, they're very clearly deserving. But if you don't follow the Dolphins closely, those players don't get the kind of recognition nationally that they deserve, and therefore they don't make the Pro Bowl. So we have to ask ourselves in going through this exercise, what players check all three of those boxes: performance, production, and recognition. And if they don't have recognition, how can we as the fans help with the recognition? And that's what I thought was most important about getting a chance to do this show. Was as I look at this Dolphins team, there's a significant number of players who I think are worthy of Pro Bowl honors. But us as the fan base, we have a weight that we can pull to help those players finish the job and get those honors. Now, of course, all of this is being done with the understanding that there's still a month left in the regular season. And while the Pro Bowl voting is open, if the wheels were to fall off the bus with any of these individual players or for the Dolphins as a team, you can understand that the dynamics of their Pro Bowl candidacy will change. But all things considered, want to take a look at the Dolphins roster and tip the cap to the Dolphins players who, at this point, in my opinion, should be participating in the Pro Bowl. The conversation starts with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. The production has been tremendous this year. There is a name brand recognition for Tua Tagovailoa as the number 5 overall pick in the 2020 NFL draft and the player that he was at Alabama. Everybody knows who Tua is. And that's been for better or for worse for the first 2.5 seasons. Now, where we're at now with the performance that he has been able to post in its entirety this season is a testament to the higher levels and ceiling of who Tua Tagovailoa is. Through 10 games, he's 8-2 as the Dolphins starter. One of those losses, of course, was against the Bengals, in which he was knocked out in the first half. He's averaging 286 yards a game, a pass rating of 112. He's been sacked 15 times, so 4.5%. He's posted an adjusted net yards per attempt of 8.86, 21 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. For context, he leads the NFL in touchdown percentage, 6.6% of attempts. Yards per attempt, 9. Yards per completion, 13.2. Passer rating, 112. Net yards per attempt and adjusted net yards per attempt. Tua Tagovailoa is number 1 in the NFL. When you hold Tua against some of his peers, you can point to different physical attributes that you could probably want in other players, but from a performance, production, and recognition standpoint, there is zero doubt Tua Tagovailoa deserves to punch his first trip to the Pro Bowl. And listen, this will have financial ramifications for Tua Tagovailoa. Because remember, the fifth-year option rules are scaled for your fifth year and fully guaranteed money based on Pro Bowls. It will define what your fifth-year option financial value is. Tua Tagovailoa has a financial incentive to make the Pro Bowl. So here's to the bounce back against the Chargers after probably his worst performance of the season against the 49ers. Tua Tagovailoa to this week leads all NFL players in fan votes. So bravo, Dolphins fans. One would have to imagine if the Dolphins finish this stretch strong and Tua plays to the averages that he's posted thus far in the season, we're going to be looking at a Pro Bowl quarterback in Miami. And that would be quite the feat, given the extensive list of quarterbacks that we have seen come through the Miami Dolphins throughout since Dan. AD after Dan. Offensively, there's low-hanging fruit to be had with both of the wide receivers, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They are both amongst the NFL's receiving leaders in statistics this year. I want to make sure I get this right, so I will pull up the receiving leaders in its totality. Tyreek Hill is number one in the NFL in receptions with 96. He is number one in the NFL in receiving yards with 1,379. He has a 102-yard lead on Justin Jefferson. He has 5 touchdowns to this point in the season. Had the big touchdown against the 49ers as far as a big explosive play. And then there's Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle is 5th in the NFL in receiving yards. And he is 4th in the AFC in receiving yards. He trails Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs. That is it. And the next players behind him, a tight end in Travis Kelce. NFC. Your next AFC wide receiver is T. Higgins. Tyreek Hill has 100 more receiving yards and more touchdowns than T. Higgins does. And that's after the game in which which Jalen was effectively a non-factor against the 49ers. So those two guys, obviously their identity and what they contribute to the Dolphins, no doubt. No doubt. You think about some of the other AFC wide receivers, guys like Jamar Chase, who are obviously very talented and had those honors last year. Jalen Waddle averaging 17.1 yards per catch along the way, being productive despite the fact that he only has 90 targets. Of the top 10 NFL wide receivers in receiving yards this year, none has fewer targets than Jalen Waddle. And Jalen Waddle is 5th on the list and has the highest yards per catch of all of those receivers as well. So the explosive plays for Jalen Waddle should be a needle mover that positions him very favorably to get his first honors as well. Because you're not just going to put 3 wide receivers on the AFC Pro Bowl roster. Top 10 overall pick, performance, production. They all line up. All 3 of those names, I think, are slam dunks. Now, I think beyond that, for the offensive side of the ball, it does get interesting because I think there's a few players with varying degrees of merit in each of the 3 boxes. And they're all up front. They're all in the trenches. But before we get there, today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual, so when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine that is you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, secure, and accessible anywhere, 100% online. Everyone deserves to feel their best. You can get all the benefits of in-person therapy, plus it's more convenient, more accessible, and more affordable. Just fill out the brief questionnaire and match with the therapist. And if things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist at any time. It could not be simpler. There's no waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. For the Dolphins elsewhere on the offensive side of the ball, I don't think, Gesicki, production's not there. Name value's there. I think maybe from a special team standpoint, you can make a case for Trent Sherfield, but there are enough other core special teams players across other teams in the AFC, and quite frankly, the Dolphins themselves, that I don't think he would get that nod. Alec Ingold, the fullback, if they're going to commit a fullback roster spot, and it seems as though they are, I know Alec Ingold leads the AFC for Pro Bowl voting amongst AFC fullbacks. Good. There have been a number of big plays for the Dolphins that would not have happened without Alec Ingold. Now, they're not necessarily quantifiable. I know some of his opportunities in the passing game have slipped through his fingers. You know, he has had the chance to have an even bigger imprint on the Dolphins offense than what he has had. But he's a high utilization player. He's performing at a high level. And he's a part of one of the top offenses in the AFC. That enough is, I think, enough recognition for him individually to be a player who gets the nod, which would give the Dolphins 4 skill players on the offensive side of the ball in this year's Pro Bowl. I think you could make varying degrees of arguments for Teron Armstead, Connor Williams, and Robert Hunt up front. Teron Armstead is the low-hanging fruit. If Teron is able to come back and play through the pec injury and be the anchor for the Dolphins offense that he has been for a very long time, there is no doubt, based on Teron Armstead's resume, that he's going to be an automatic default. He's a big-name free agent signing. The Dolphins offense made a huge leap. He's made the Pro Bowl in 3 of the last 5 seasons. In the 2 seasons in which he did not, he missed 6 and 8 games. Teron this season has played in 10 of 12 games, so he's only missed 2. And we have a chance to see him back again this weekend. Whether or not that actually happens or not remains to be seen. But it sounds like he's trying to gear up to play with a brace for his shoulder and his pec. And he wants to play. And quite frankly, the Dolphins need him to play. So if Teron Armstead ends up gutting this thing out and playing between now and the end of the season, the skills speak for themselves. He's made 3 Pro Bowls in the last 5 years. He's second-team All-Pro back in 2018. He's helped transform the Dolphins' offense and their offensive line. It's a Pro Bowl player. So for my money, at least, that would give you 5 offensively. I worry about oversaturation. I look across the league. I think Connor Williams has a case to be made, but I don't think he's a slam dunk. No, it's a first year playing the position. There's Corey Linsley with the Chargers, who's been an excellent staple for them. You have Creed Humphrey with the Chiefs, who's been an excellent staple for them the last 2 years. And that's just in the AFC West. You do have Ryan Kelly, who's had a down year. This Colts team in its entirety has had a down year. But I don't think Connor's going to get out in front of those other 2 guys. And as a result, his name deserves recognition for being in consideration. But I don't think he's a first ballot Pro Bowl guy this year, just based off the numbers game. And then there's Robert Hunt. And Robert Hunt is really playing at a high level. I'm just concerned about the name recognition not being there for Robert Hunt. From a performance and a production standpoint, and those kind of blur together more for offensive linemen than for any other position, Robert Hunt deserves Pro Bowl honors. He has taken another significant leap this year. He's been a staple. He moves people in the run game. He's very balanced in pass protection. He's a very balanced player. But if you asked big picture media to name offensive linemen in the AFC, they're going to mention guys like Quentin Nelson, right? They're going to mention guys like Joe Thuney with the Kansas City Chiefs. It's just low. Kevin Zeitler with the Baltimore Ravens leads all guards in the AFC with fan voting right now. Robert Hunt should get Pro Bowl honors. based on the first 12 weeks or 12 games played. Obviously, you have to finish the season. He should. Whether or not he will is a different story and remains to be seen. But I want to make sure Robert Hunt gets his flowers on this show for the performance that he has had in year 3, because he has very much taken the kind of step that you were hoping you would get from an early second round player, a top 50 pick. He's there. He is playing at a very high level. That would give the Dolphins potentially 6 offensively. I don't think they'll get that. That would be a very large number. Now, if the Dolphins win the next 2 and they're going into the game in Christmas and they're 10-4 and they're in the driver's seat in the AFC East, well, maybe you do get there. Maybe you do get 6, half of your offensive personnel is Pro Bowl players, but I would be very surprised because you do have high-powered offenses like Buffalo and Kansas City also residing in the AFC. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure amongst guards in the AFC side of things, I think there's enough hurdles for Robert Hunt to clear, and I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. Bitonio with Cleveland has been a long-term staple as a Pro Bowl type player. Thuney, Zeitler, Quentin Nelson, and Quentin Nelson has not played to his usual standard this year. I mean, make no mistake about that. Wyatt Teller with the Browns. Robert Hunt's your closest one. I think if Teron Armstead stays healthy, he will get in, and that would give the Dolphins 5 on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively is where things get interesting because your historical household name players are not necessarily the players that are performing to their highest of capabilities thus far this season. But before we get there, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy done right. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 extra money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available in-house. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you can watch, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. With safe and fast withdrawals, it is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So if you put in 100, they're going to give you another 100 to play with. If you put in 50, they're going to give you another 50. Don't forget, promo code Locked On to sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100 with the Prize Picks app or at prizepicks.com. Defensively, I think we have to acknowledge some of the Dolphins' statistical leaders defensively because it's not, the team has not played to the standard of the last 2 seasons defensively, and it's understandable as to why. You're missing 60% of what your originally scheduled starting secondary was. At the end of the day, nobody cares, right? But I do think defensively, if you play on a unit that is averaging 24 points per game, which would be 26th in the NFL as things currently stand, you are going to have have significant statistical production to move the needle and get people to take note. Melvin Ingram is the team's leading sack leader with 6. Jalen Phillips is right behind him at 5. Bradley Chubb, in the 4 games that he has played with the Dolphins, has logged 2.5 sacks. And in its entirety this season, Bradley Chubb has totaled 8 sacks. So that might be one to watch. That may be the guy. From a coverage standpoint, there's not too many players that are consistently getting their hands on the football. Players that have defended 5 or more passes for the Dolphins this season through 12 games. Xavier Howard has a total of 9, 1 interception and 8 passes defensed. Javon Holland has 7, 2 interceptions and 5 passes defensed. Kader Kohu has 5 passes broken up, no interceptions, and Justin Bethel has 1 interception, which came against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and 4 passes defensed. That's it. That's it. That is the extent in which Dolphins defensive backs are consistently getting their hands on the football. As a matter of fact, your next 2 highest players in passes defense are a defensive lineman in Zach Sealer with 4 and a linebacker with Jerome Baker in 3. The ball production in the secondary has been a sore spot, which I think we all knew, right? Yeah, I think you all identify that, and you can see that when they play. The Dolphins on the season, 7 interceptions in 12 games. Javon Holland, 2, leads the team. Xavier Howard, Justin Bethel, Noah Benogany, Andrew Van Ginkel, Ron McKinley. Now, here's the silver lining, and maybe this trend continues and we can turn this thing around here down the final stretch. The Dolphins have posted 5 interceptions in their last 3 games and at least 1 turnover in each of their last 3 games. Across their first 9 games, they only logged 1 or more turnovers in 3 of the 9. Now you got 3 in a row. You got Chargers, Bills, Packers, Patriots, Jets to play. We'll see how many you can tag on here at the end. I think Bradley Chubb, if he finishes strong and keeps the pace that he's on, he'll probably be somewhere around 12 sacks this season. I'm not going to say that that's good enough to lock him in, but I do think it is the best opportunity that the Dolphins have, minus Xavier Howard getting hot. I am sympathetic to X playing through some injuries thus far this season. He's had a couple taken off the board by bad breaks. He missed the one on third down against the Bills down by the red zone that would have put him on the 20 and likely avoided the heart attack-inducing final possession in week 3. He had one taken off the board with defensive holding that was most definitively not defensive holding. So he's been close a couple of times. But he finally got one against San Francisco last week to get himself on the board. And I'm hoping that we do see more, not just for Xavier Howard's Pro Bowl candidacy, but also for the fact that he's chasing down, and Xavier's made the Pro Bowl 3 of the last 4 seasons. The only one he missed was 2019 when he only played in 5 games. Xavier Howard is chasing history as far as the Dolphins go. He's up to 28 career interceptions. He's in the upper echelon. I'd love to see him gain a little bit more ground so that next year might be a year in which you see him challenge the franchise leaders. But that won't come unless there's more production down the stretch here. But I don't think, unfortunately, at this point, Xavier Howard, now he might get in off name brand alone. If he tags 2 more on between now and the end of the year, we might just auto default to, well, Xavier Howard's a Pro Bowl corner. Let's give it to him. Right? I don't think they will, but I've seen players make the Pro Bowl for less in worse seasons, much worse seasons than what Xavier Howard is supposed to, where he's been fine. He just hasn't been X for most of the year. Javon Holland, I think his value won't be recognized because of the statistical production, and I'm sympathetic for Javon Holland as well, where his production extends well beyond the ball production that he's been able to post because he plays such a critical role on the back end and cleaning up all the messes and making sure that the Dolphins are, when they give up explosive plays, they're not touchdowns, right? And you see that week in and week out with Javon Holland. If I had a vote, Javon Holland will get one. I don't have a vote. I mean, I could fan vote just like you guys do. The only other name that really, really pops to me, Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins has steadily developed and progressed and become a stalwart defensive lineman. His sack production this year is down versus last year. He had 4.5 last year in 17 games. He has 1.5 through 12 games. But he's already bested last year's total of tackles for loss. He has 12 in 12 games versus 10 in 17 games last year. He's an excellent football player. He is on pace once again to be amongst the team leaders in actual tackles, which for interior defensive linemen is unheard of. He has 66. He has 9 tackles out of first place on the team. It's Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins had 89 tackles last year. If I had to rank the guys defensively in order of probability, I would probably say Bradley Chubb on his current pace is number 1. Christian Wilkins should be number 2. Javon Holland 3 and Xavier Howard 4. I think maybe you get 1. So you're talking 5+ Dolphins Pro Bowl players in general. It is probably what you are looking at, barring unforeseen circumstances to close the year. But us as fans, we can at least influence that and raise the profile of these players with the fan votes on social media. And I hope we do. It's been great to see Dolphins players well represented in the fan voting to this point in time. And keep the foot on the gas. And the same message obviously goes to the Dolphins themselves. They'll play the Chargers on Sunday Night Football this week. Looking to bounce back. It's a big game. It's a really big game for a couple different reasons. Obviously, your aspirations in the AFC East divisional race with Buffalo next week in prime time. The playoff picture itself. And then you also have this dynamic, which we really haven't talked about because we have been very much wrapped up in the magnitude of the race that we have been on. The Dolphins, with 1 win, would log their 9th of the season, which would give them and guarantee them 3 consecutive winning seasons. The last time the Dolphins had 3 consecutive winning seasons was 2001 to 2003, in which they went 11-5, 9-7, and 10-6. They missed the playoffs at 10-6 in 2003. They missed the playoffs at 9-7 in 2002. We got those 2 unfortunate bad breaks with 10-6 and out and 9-8 and out the last 2 years. This one would punch your ticket to the postseason based on the wiggle room the Dolphins have afforded themselves at this point in time. And then, of course, you get into they had a stretch from 97 to 2003 in which they were a winning team and they made the playoffs 5 consecutive years in that stretch of time. Could this be the start of another stretch like that with hopefully more postseason success? Let's find out. But step 1 comes on Sunday night against the Chargers by getting it done. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins, your team every day. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great one. I will talk with you all again tomorrow for the full power to the pod. Fins up.